The wheelchair-bound millionaire couldn't stand maids until the new girl danced and changed everything. For months he humiliated every worker who crossed his mansion, turning suffering into routine. But the new hire didn't bow. She faced his contempt with silence, hard work, and a dance that silenced the entire house. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Now, on with the story. The rain beat hard against the mansion's window panes when Marina got off the bus, clutching her canvas bag tightly to her chest. London was grey on that May afternoon, and the Kensington neighbourhood seemed even more imposing under the heavy sky. She observed the wrought-iron gate, tall and intimidating, that separated the wet sidewalk from the most talked-about property in the area. She took a deep breath, adjusted the hair tied back in a simple bun, and rang the bell. There was no room for fear, not now. Her mother was in the hospital facing another round of treatment. The bills were piling up, the medicine cost more than she had, and this job was the only door that hadn't completely closed yet. Marina knew what they said about Ashworth Manor. She knew that no employee lasted more than a week. She knew the master was impossible, that the house lived in a sepulchral silence, that the rules were far too strict. But she also knew she had no choice. A metallic voice echoed through the intercom. "Identify yourself." "Marina Clark. I'm here for the domestic help position." There was a long pause. Then the gate creaked open with a deep groan, as if the house itself were warning her that this decision would not be an easy one. Marina crossed the impeccable garden, where the rose bushes were lined up with almost military precision, and reached the main door. Before she could knock, the door opened. Before her stood a middle-aged woman, tall, thin, with grey hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore a flawless grey uniform and carried an expression on her face that left no room for smiles. This was Mrs. Beatrice, the housekeeper of Ashworth Manor for over 20 years, and her reputation was almost as feared as that of the master himself. "Come in and wipe your feet." Marina obeyed in silence, carefully cleaning the soles of her shoes on the doormat before stepping onto the gleaming marble of the entrance hall. The house was magnificent, filled with crystal chandeliers, wide staircases, and furniture that looked like works of art. But there was something heavy in the air, as if all that beauty were frozen in time. "Follow me." Mrs. Beatrice walked quickly through the corridors, and Marina followed her in silence. They passed through immense rooms, all exquisitely decorated but devoid of life. There were no family pictures on the walls, no laughter echoing through the rooms, not even a sound beyond the ticking of a grandfather clock. Finally, they arrived at a huge office with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a mahogany desk in the center. Behind it, facing the window, was a man in a wheelchair. He didn't turn when they entered. "Mr. Ashworth, the new candidate has arrived." Marina felt her heart race. Gabriel Ashworth, 35 years old, heir to one of London's largest real estate empires, former race car driver, ex-fiancé of one of high society's most desired women, and now a man confined to a wheelchair after an accident that changed everything. He turned the chair slowly, and Marina saw his face for the first time. He was handsome, with sharp features and dark, intense eyes. But there was something in those eyes that made her shiver. It wasn't sadness. It was anger. A cold, contained anger that seemed to burn from within. Another one. His voice was deep, cutting. Marina held her, gaze steady, even as she felt her legs tremble. "Yes, sir." He looked her up and down as if he were evaluating an object. Then he let out a contemptuous sigh. "How long do you think you'll last? A week? 3 days?" Marina didn't answer. She knew any word could be used against her. Mrs. Beatrice beside her maintained her rigid posture, arms crossed, observing everything with a hawk's eye. "I have no patience for tears, excuses, or incompetence. If you accept this job, you will follow the rules to the letter. I don't want conversation, I don't want opinions. I don't want you involved in anything beyond your duties. This house runs like clockwork, and I do not tolerate tardiness." "I understand, sir." "You understand, we'll see." Gabriel picked up a sheet of paper from the desk and held it out towards Marina. She approached and took the document. It was a list, a huge list with detailed tasks, specific schedules, and cleaning standards that seemed to have been written by someone looking for reasons to fire people. Your first week will be a trial. If you make one mistake, you're out. If you question any order, you're out. If you arrive late, you're out. Understood? Yes, sir. You can start tomorrow, 5 in the morning. Mrs. Beatrice will show you to the maid's room and explain the rest. He turned his chair back to the window, dismissing her without another word. Marina followed Mrs. Beatrice out of the office, feeling the weight of that first conversation like a stone in her chest. As they climbed a side staircase leading to the 3rd floor, where the staff quarters were located, Mrs. Beatrice finally spoke without looking back. I'll be clear with you, girl. I've worked in this house for longer than you've been alive. I saw this family prosper. I saw parties that lasted all night. I saw this place full of joy, and I saw it all fall apart. Marina listened in silence, trying to absorb every piece of information. Mr. Ashworth wasn't always like this. Before the accident, he was different. Generous, polite, full of energy. But when everything changed, when he lost the use of his legs, he also lost the woman who swore she loved him. She left before he even got out of the hospital. And since then, he hasn't been the same, Mrs. Beatrice stopped in front of a narrow door and opened it. It was a small but clean room with a single bed, a simple wardrobe, and a window that looked out onto the back of the property. You'll sleep here. Quick showers, no wasting water, immaculate uniform. And remember, do not approach Mr. Ashworth unless you are summoned. He doesn't like familiarity. Marina nodded, entering the room and placing her bag on the bed. Mrs. Beatrice stood in the doorway for another moment, observing her with penetrating eyes. Why did you agree to work here? You must have heard the rumors. You must know that no one stays. Marina turned to face her, and for the first time since she had arrived, she spoke with firmness. I need the job. My mother is sick, and I can't fail her. Mrs. Beatrice raised an eyebrow, but didn't comment. She just nodded and closed the door, leaving Marina alone. She sat on the bed looking around the room that would be her home for the next few days, weeks, or months if she could survive. She thought of her mother, of the last time she had visited her in the hospital, of the weak smile she had tried to give despite the pain. She thought of the piled-up bills, the calls from creditors, the feeling of sinking without being able to breathe. No, she wasn't going to give up. Marina stood up, opened her bag, and took out the only photo she carried with her. It was an old faded picture from when she was a child. She was standing next to her mother and father, the 3 of them smiling in front of a gate she recognized well. It was the gate of Ashworth Manor. Her father had worked there, many years ago as a gardener. He spoke fondly of the Ashworth family, of Gabriel's father's generosity, of the way he was treated with respect. Marina held onto those memories like a treasure, even though she had never told anyone. She was only 6 when her father passed away from a sudden illness, and since then life had become a constant struggle. But now, being here, in this same house, felt like a sign. Perhaps an opportunity to honor her father's memory, to prove that she too could be strong. Marina put the photo back in her bag and lay down, closing her eyes. Tomorrow would be the first real day, and she was determined to show that she was not like the others. The dawn came too quickly. The alarm clock went off at 4:30, and Marina jumped out of bed, showering quickly and putting on the uniform Mrs. Beatrice had left on the chair. It was a simple grey dress with a white apron and closed-toed black shoes. She tied her hair back, washed her face, and went down to the kitchen before 5. Mrs. Beatrice was already there, preparing breakfast with precise mechanical movements. She looked Marina up and down, checking every detail. Punctual, that's good, but punctuality is the bare minimum. She handed her a printed list, even longer than the one from the day before. These are your tasks for today. Start with the main living room, then the library. At 9 o'clock sharp, take Mr. Ashworth's coffee to his office. He does not tolerate delays. Marina took the list, feeling the weight of the expectations. But she said nothing. She just nodded and began to work. The next few hours were grueling. Every piece of furniture had to be cleaned in a specific way. Every flower vase had to be at an exact angle. Every rug had to be vacuumed in circular motions. Marina sweated, her back ached, her hands grew red from scrubbing, but she didn't stop. When 9 o'clock struck, she prepared the tray with the coffee, following Mrs. Beatrice's exact instructions. Black coffee, no sugar, lightly toasted bread, strawberry jam in a small porcelain dish. She went up to the office, knocked twice on the door, and waited. Enter. She pushed the door open carefully, balancing the tray, and went in. Gabriel was sitting at the desk looking at his computer screen. He didn't look up as she approached. Marina placed the tray on the desk in the designated spot and took a step back. "Anything else, sir?" He finally looked at her, and Marina saw that coldness in his eyes again. "You're still here?" "Yes, sir." "Impressive. Usually on the first day they're already crying." Marina didn't respond. She just maintained her posture, waiting. Gabriel picked up the coffee cup, took a sip, and frowned. "It's lukewarm." Marina felt her heart sink. She was sure the coffee had been hot when it left the kitchen, but she said nothing. She just lowered her head. "I'm sorry, sir. I'll bring another one." "Don't bother, but next time bring it hot." "Yes, sir." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Marina." She paused, surprised. It was the first time he had said her name. "Yes, sir." "Why are you here?" The question caught her off guard. Marina hesitated, wondering if she should be honest or give a generic answer. She decided on the truth. "I need the money, sir. My mother is sick, and I'm all she has." Gabriel watched her for a long moment as if trying to decipher if she was lying. Then he waved his hand, dismissing her. "You may go." Marina left the office, closing the door behind her. She leaned against the hallway wall for a moment, taking a deep breath. That man was an enigma. Cold, relentless, but there was something about him that intrigued her. A hidden pain, a wound that had never healed. The following days were a silent hell. Marina woke before sunrise, worked non-stop, completed every task on the endless list, and returned to her room only after night had fallen. Mrs. Beatrice watched her constantly, looking for flaws, criticizing every move. Gabriel, for his part, rarely spoke to her, but always found something to complain about. The floor wasn't shiny enough. The curtains were poorly drawn. Dinner lacked salt. Marina endured it all in silence. She didn't cry, she didn't complain, she didn't ask for pity. She just kept going. On the Friday of the first week, something changed. Marina was cleaning the library, gently wiping a cloth over the spines of the old books, when she heard Gabriel's voice from the hallway. "Mrs. Beatrice, where are the documents for the meeting?" "They're in the meeting room, sir. I'll get them." "No need, I'll go." Marina heard the sound of the wheelchair approaching and quickly moved away from the bookshelf, stepping aside so as not to block his path. Gabriel entered the library, but stopped when he saw her. "Are you cleaning the books?" "Yes, sir, it was on the task list." He looked at the shelves as if seeing something he had long forgotten. He approached slowly, observing the titles. They were old books, many with leather covers and gold lettering. Classics of literature, volumes of history, encyclopedias. My father loved this library. He spent hours here, reading, taking notes. I used to find it boring. Marina didn't know what to say, so she remained silent. Gabriel reached out and gently touched the spine of one of the books. "Now I understand. When you can't go out, books become your only window to the world." There was a deep sadness in those words, and for the first time Marina saw Gabriel not as the relentless boss, but as a lost man. He turned abruptly, as if he realized he had said too much. "Continue your work." And he left the library, leaving Marina alone with the silence and the feeling that she had seen for a brief moment the person Gabriel used to be. That night, as she was returning to her room, Marina crossed paths with Mrs. Beatrice in the hallway. The housekeeper stopped her with a stern look. "You've completed 1 week." "Yes, ma'am." "I expected you to be gone by now." Marina lifted her chin, meeting the woman's gaze. "I'm not leaving." Mrs. Beatrice narrowed her eyes, assessing her. "We'll see." And she turned, disappearing down the dark corridor. Marina entered her room, closed the door, and sat on the bed. Her body was exhausted, but something inside her refused to break. She had survived the first week. Now it was time to prove she could survive much more. But what Marina didn't know was that, at that very moment, on the floor below, Gabriel was sitting alone in his office, looking out the window. And for the first time in months, he wasn't thinking about his pain. He was thinking about the young woman with the steady gaze who didn't bow, who didn't cry, who simply kept going. And that bothered him, because he was used to breaking people. And Marina refused to break. On Saturday, Marina had her first day off. Mrs. Beatrice informed her that she could leave after breakfast and had to return by 6 in the evening. Marina took the bus and went straight to the hospital where her mother was admitted. Entering the room, she found Mrs. Helena Clark sitting up in bed, pale but with a faint smile on her face. Marina rushed to hug her, feeling the tears finally escape. "My dear, how are you?" "I'm fine, Mom. And you? Did the doctors say anything?" Mrs. Clark caressed her daughter's face, wiping away the tears with her thumb. "They said the treatment is working, but it will take time, and it will be expensive." "I'll manage, Mom. I found a job. I'll take care of everything." Mrs. Clark held her daughter's hands, squeezing them tightly. "You've always been strong, Marina. Since you were little, your father would be so proud." Marina smiled, feeling a tightness in her chest. She stayed with her mother for a few hours, talking about simple things, trying to bring a little joy to that hospital room. But when it was time to leave, Marina felt the weight of responsibility return with full force. She needed that job. She couldn't fail. Upon returning to the manor, Marina found the house in unusual commotion. Cars were parked out front, and men in suits were coming and going, carrying briefcases. She went through the service door and went straight up to her room, trying not to draw attention. But just as she was about to enter, she heard voices coming from downstairs. One was Gabriel's, the other a female voice, elegant and authoritative. Marina went down one flight of stairs and saw through the partially open office door a woman of about 60, with grey hair, in a flawless updo, wearing a navy blue suit. It was Mrs. Celeste Ashworth, Gabriel's mother. "You can't go on like this, Gabriel." "Don't tell me how to live my life, Mother. I am your mother. I have the right to be concerned. You've locked yourself in this house, pushed away all your friends, turned this place into a prison. And you think I chose this? You think I wanted to be like this?" Gabriel's voice was filled with anger, but also with pain. Mrs. Celeste took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "No, my son, but you chose to sink into bitterness, and that needs to end." Marina felt she shouldn't be listening, but she couldn't move. There was something in that conversation that held her captive. The family's charity ball has always been a tradition. Your father started it, I continued it, and you should continue it too. Cancelling the event after the accident was a mistake. People need to see that you haven't given up. I'm not going to make a circus of my condition. It's not a circus, it's a demonstration that life goes on. And this year we will hold the ball here at the manor, as it used to be. Gabriel let out a bitter laugh. "Here? Are you insane?" "No, I'm decided." There was a tense silence. Then Mrs. Celeste continued, and Marina noticed something different in her tone, something determined. "And what's more, there will be a special performance, a dance." Gabriel laughed again, this time with contempt. "A dance?" "Mother, you've completely lost your mind. The performance will be by the new employee, Marina, isn't it?" Marina felt her blood run cold. What? She didn't even know how to dance, or rather, she only knew the basics, nothing professional. Her mother had taught her a few steps when she was a child, but nothing that could be presented at an event of that scale. "You can't be serious, Mother." "I'm completely serious. I spoke with her a few days ago, and she agreed." Marina's eyes widened. Mrs. Celeste had never spoken to her about this. How could she have agreed? At that moment, Mrs. Beatrice appeared behind Marina, grabbing her arm firmly. "What are you doing here?" I just got back." Mrs. Beatrice pulled her away from the door, dragging her to the kitchen. As soon as they arrived, the housekeeper released Marina's arm forcefully. "Were you listening to Mr. Ashworth's conversation?" I didn't mean to, I just— Silence! Mrs. Beatrice was furious. Her eyes shone with a contained rage, and Marina felt a shiver run down her spine. Do you think you can meddle in this family's affairs? Do you think you can just listen in on private conversations? No, ma'am. I swear it wasn't my intention. Mrs. Beatrice moved closer, her face inches from Marina's. I knew you were like the others. Nosy, curious, thinking you can change things, but you won't change anything. And if I find out you're trying to take advantage of Mrs. Celeste's kindness, I will personally ensure you are thrown out of this house. Marina felt tears burn her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She swallowed hard and lifted her chin. I'm not trying to take advantage of anyone. I just want to work. Mrs. Beatrice stared at her for another moment, then stepped back, adjusting her apron. Then work, and stay out of matters that don't concern you. She left the kitchen, leaving Marina alone. The young woman's legs were trembling and she had to lean on the table to keep from falling. What was happening? Why had Mrs. Celeste said she had agreed to a dance performance? And more importantly, how was she going to get out of this situation? Marina took a deep breath, trying to calm her thoughts. She needed to find out what was going on. And for that, she would have to talk to Mrs. Celeste. But before she could think of anything, the kitchen door opened again. It was Mrs. Celeste, with a gentle smile on her face. Marina, dear, we need to talk. Marina felt her heart pound as Mrs. Celeste entered the kitchen. The woman had a commanding presence, a natural elegance that contrasted with Mrs. Beatrice's harshness, but there was a warmth in her eyes, a kindness Marina hadn't expected to find in that house. Please sit down. Marina obeyed, pulling out a chair and sitting at the kitchen table. Mrs. Celeste did the same, smoothing her suit before folding her hands in her lap. I imagine you overheard part of the conversation I had with my son. Marina hesitated, but decided to be honest. I did, ma'am, but it wasn't my intention to intrude. Mrs. Celeste smiled, shaking her head. Don't worry. I know the walls in this house have ears, and perhaps it's for the best that you heard, so I won't have to repeat everything. She picked up a cup of tea that was on the table and took a sip before continuing. Marina, I know your family's history. I know your father worked here many years ago. He was a good, honest, dedicated man. My husband held him in high regard, and when I learned you were working here, I wanted to speak with you personally. Marina's eyes widened in surprise. You knew who I was? I did. Mrs. Beatrice informed me on your first day, but I wanted to observe how you would behave if you could handle the pressure, and I must say I'm impressed. You have the same strength your father had. Mrs. Celeste's words touched Marina deeply. She felt her eyes well up, but blinked quickly to hold back the tears. Thank you, ma'am. Mrs. Celeste leaned forward, her gaze serious. Marina, I need your help. My son is drowning in bitterness, and I don't know how to reach him anymore. He has closed himself off from the world, turned this house into a mausoleum, and I can't allow him to continue like this. Marina listened in silence, unsure of what to say. The charity ball has always been a tradition in our family. For decades, we've raised funds for charities, helped families in need, made a difference. But after the accident, Gabriel cancelled everything, and in doing so, he cancelled a part of himself. Mrs. Celeste paused, taking a deep breath. I want to hold the ball again, here, at the manor, and I want there to be a special performance, a dance performance to represent a new beginning, overcoming adversity, hope, and I want you to give that performance. Marina felt the ground disappear from under her feet. Ma'am, I don't know how to dance professionally. I have no training, no experience. It would be a disaster. Mrs. Celeste took Marina's hand, squeezing it firmly. You don't have to be perfect. You have to be real. You have to show that it's possible to get back up, even when all seems lost. And I believe you are the right person for that. Marina shook her head, feeling panic rise within her. But I can't. I'll embarrass you. I'll embarrass the family. I can't risk my job like this. You won't lose your job, I guarantee it. And what's more, I'll hire a teacher to help you. You'll practice every day and I'll be by your side." Marina wanted to refuse, to say this was madness. But when she looked into Mrs. Celeste's eyes, she saw something that made her hesitate. Hope. This woman was desperate to save her son, and Marina was the only card she had to play. "And if I agree, what will Mr. Ashworth say?" Mrs. Celeste smiled, but there was a steely determination in that smile. "He will complain. He will protest. He will try to stop it. But I am the mistress of this house as much as he is, and this time I will not yield." Marina was silent for a long moment, weighing her options. This could go terribly wrong. It could be humiliating, disastrous. But at the same time, something inside her wanted to accept. Perhaps it was a chance to honor her father's memory. Perhaps it was an opportunity to prove she was capable of something more. Or perhaps it was simply the need to help someone who, like her, was lost. "All right, I'll do it," Mrs. Celeste smiled, squeezing Marina's hand once more. "Thank you, my dear. You don't know how much this means to me." She stood up, adjusting her suit. "The dance teacher will start on Monday. You'll practice in the ballroom every evening after your shift. And Marina, one last thing." "Yes, ma'am?" "Don't let anyone make you give up. Not my son, not Mrs. Beatrice, not anyone. You have a right to be here. Remember that." And with those words, Mrs. Celeste left the kitchen, leaving Marina alone with a whirlwind of emotions. This May. Following days were a roller coaster. Marina continued to fulfill her duties as an employee, but now she carried the weight of the performance on her shoulders. Gabriel, as Mrs. Celeste had predicted, was furious when he learned his mother had confirmed the ball. He yelled, slammed his hand on the desk, threatened to cancel everything. But Mrs. Celeste was unyielding. The ball would happen, with or without his approval. As for Marina, Gabriel barely looked at her. When he needed to ask for something, he spoke even more coldly, more distantly. It was as if she had become invisible to him. Mrs. Beatrice, on the other hand, was visibly annoyed. The housekeeper moved through the house with an even sterner expression, monitoring Marina's every move, looking for any mistake to use as grounds for dismissal. But Marina was careful. She gave her no reason. On Monday evening, after finishing her shift, Marina went down to the ballroom. It was an immense room, with a marble floor, gigantic chandeliers, and mirrors covering one of the walls. There was a sense of abandonment in the air, as if the space hadn't been used in years. In the center of the room, waiting for her, was a man of about 50, slender, with grey hair and impeccable posture. He wore dance attire and had a serious but not hostile expression. "You must be Marina. My name is Henry. I was hired by Mrs. Celeste to help you with the performance." Marina shook his hand, feeling out of place in that environment. "A pleasure, but I should warn you I don't have much experience." Henry smiled, shaking his head. "Everyone starts somewhere. Let's see what you can do." Over the next few hours, Marina discovered that dancing was much harder than she had imagined. Henry was patient but demanding. He corrected every movement, every posture, every step. And Marina, used to enduring pressure, held on. She sweated, her legs burned, her feet ached. But she didn't give up. "You have potential," Henry said at the end of the first lesson. "But you'll need a lot of practice. The performance is in 6 weeks." 6 weeks. It seemed like so much time and so little at the same time. "I'll do it," Marina said, more to herself than to him. Henry nodded, packing his things. "I'll see you tomorrow, same time." Marina stayed alone in the ballroom for a few more minutes, looking at her reflection in the mirror. She was tired, sweaty, her hair escaping from its bun. But there was something different in her eyes, a determination she didn't know she possessed. "You're wasting your time." Gabriel's voice made her turn quickly. He was at the entrance to the ballroom in his wheelchair, watching her with that same cold gaze. "Mr. Ashworth, do you really think you can put on a decent performance in 6 weeks? You who can barely dance?" His words cut deep, but Marina refused to lower her head. "I'm going to try." Gabriel let out a bitter laugh. "Trying isn't enough. You're going to get up on that stage in front of dozens of important people, and you're going to make a fool of yourself. And when that happens, I'm the one who will pay the price, because everyone will say that Gabriel Ashworth no longer has control over his own house." Marina felt anger begin to boil inside her. She had put up with so much, so many humiliations, so much criticism. But this was crossing the line. With all due respect, sir, I'm the one who will be on that stage. I'm the one risking embarrassment. You don't have to do anything. You can just watch from a distance, as you've done with everything in your life. The silence that followed was heavy. Gabriel stared at her with an intensity that made Marina want to back away. But she stood her ground, staring back at him. You know nothing about my life. I know enough. I know you've given up. I know you'd rather make everyone around you suffer than face your own pain. Gabriel clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white. Get out of here. Marina took a deep breath, trying to control her voice. I will leave, but I'm not giving up. No matter what you say, I'm going to do this performance, and I'm going to do the best I can. And without waiting for a response, Marina left the ballroom, leaving Gabriel alone in the darkness. She went up to her room, closed the door, and collapsed onto the bed, trembling. She had crossed the line. She had confronted her boss. She had been disrespectful. She would probably be fired in the morning. But for some reason, she didn't regret it. Because, for the first time since she had arrived in that house, she had spoken the truth. And the truth, however painful, was liberating. Marina expected to be fired, but it didn't happen. The next morning, Mrs. Beatrice said nothing about the confrontation. And Gabriel, when she brought his coffee, just nodded, dismissing her in silence. It was as if the conversation had never happened. The following days followed the same routine. Marina worked during the day, practiced at night. Henry was relentless, but she was progressing. The movements started to make sense, her body started to respond. It wasn't perfect, yet far from it. But it was better. A week later, Marina was in the ballroom, repeating a sequence for the 10th time when she heard a different sound. It was the sound of the wheelchair. Gabriel had entered the ballroom again, but this time he said nothing. He just stood there, watching. Marina tried to ignore him, focusing on the movements, but it was impossible not to feel the weight of his gaze. She missed a step, stumbled, nearly fell. You're forcing the turn too much. You need to use the momentum from your hips, not just your foot. Marina stopped, surprised. Gabriel had spoken, and it wasn't to criticize, it was to help. What do you mean? Gabriel sighed, moving a little closer. When you turn, you're using all the force in your leg. But the movement has to come from your core, from your hips. That way you save energy and gain more control. Marina looked at him, confused. You know how to dance? Gabriel looked away, as if caught in a confession. I used to. My mother insisted I learn when I was a teenager. She thought it was part of a gentleman's education. There was an uncomfortable silence. Then Gabriel continued, his voice lower. Try again. But this time, turn slowly. Feel where your center of balance is. Marina hesitated but decided to try. She repeated the movement, this time more slowly, focusing on what Gabriel had said. And it worked. The turn was cleaner, more controlled. Better. Marina smiled, surprised with herself. And when she looked at Gabriel, she saw something different on his face. It wasn't hostility. It was something softer, perhaps recognition. Thank you. Gabriel nodded and turned his chair, leaving the ballroom without another word. Marina stood there, still processing what had happened. Gabriel had helped her. For the first time since she had arrived, he hadn't attacked, hadn't humiliated. He had simply helped, and that changed something inside her. In the following days, Gabriel returned to the ballroom, always at night, always in silence. At first he just watched, but gradually he began to offer guidance, an adjustment here, a correction there. And Marina, who was initially tense with his presence, started to get used to it. She even began to look forward to those visits. Henry noticed the change. You're progressing very quickly. Has something changed? Marina hesitated, but decided to be honest. Mr. Ashworth has been helping me. Henry raised an eyebrow, surprised. Really? That's unexpected. Why? Henry smiled, packing his things. Because Gabriel Ashworth is known for pushing people away, not helping them. If he's getting involved, it's because you've achieved something many haven't. You've touched a part of him that's still alive. Marina didn't know how to respond to that. She just nodded, thoughtfully. That night, when it was late and she was about to leave the ballroom, Gabriel entered again. But this time there was something different. He seemed hesitant. Marina. Yes, sir. He was silent for a moment, as if struggling to find the words. I wanted to apologize for what I said that first day, about you making a fool of yourself. It wasn't fair. Marina felt her heart tighten. That was the last thing she expected to hear. Thank you, sir. Gabriel looked around the ballroom at the mirrors, at the gleaming marble floor. This place used to be full of life, parties, laughter, music. My mother loved having guests here, and I loved it too. But after the accident, I couldn't come in here anymore without feeling angry. Why? Because it reminded me of everything I lost, of everything I used to be. Marina took a step towards him, her voice soft. You haven't lost everything. You're still here. You can still make a difference. Gabriel let out a sad laugh. Make a difference? I can barely move on my own. How can I make a difference? Marina knelt beside the chair, looking directly into his eyes. By helping others, like you've been helping me. That makes a difference. Gabriel stared at her for a long moment, and Marina saw something break inside him. It wasn't a complete transformation, not a miracle, but it was a crack in the armor, a small sign that the person he used to be was still there, hidden beneath the pain. Thank you, Marina. And for the first time since she had arrived, Gabriel smiled. A small, almost imperceptible smile. But it was a smile. Marina smiled back, feeling something warm spread through her chest. But the peace was short-lived. The next morning, Marina woke to insistent knocking on her bedroom door. It was Mrs. Beatrice, and she was furious. Get dressed and come down to the office immediately. Mrs. Celeste wants to speak with you. Marina felt her stomach churn. Mrs. Beatrice's tone left no doubt. Something was wrong. She dressed quickly and went downstairs, finding Mrs. Celeste and Gabriel in the office. Mrs. Celeste's expression was serious, and Gabriel looked furious. Marina, sit down. She obeyed, her heart pounding. Mrs. Celeste held up an envelope, extending it towards Marina. These documents were found in your room by Mrs. Beatrice this morning. Can you explain? Marina took the envelope, opening it with trembling hands. Inside were medical papers, hospital receipts. But something was wrong. The names were different. The dates didn't match. I don't understand. These documents aren't mine. Mrs. Beatrice stepped forward, her arms crossed. Of course they are. They were hidden under your mattress. You invented the story about your sick mother to gain the family's sympathy and get to stay here. Marina felt her blood boil. That's not true. My mother is really sick. These documents are fake. Gabriel slammed his hand on the desk, his face contorted with rage. Enough. I knew you were like the others, a liar, a manipulator. My mother trusted you and you betrayed that trust. Marina felt tears burn her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. I didn't lie. Someone planted those documents in my room. Someone is trying to frame me. Mrs. Beatrice let out a cruel laugh. And who would do that? You're just another employee. No one cares enough about you to set up something like this. Marina looked at Mrs. Celeste, pleading with her eyes. Ma'am, please, believe me. My mother is at the General Hospital. I can prove it. I can take you there. Mrs. Celeste seemed torn, looking between Marina and the documents. I want to believe you, Marina, but these papers, they're fake. Please, give me a chance to prove it. Gabriel turned his chair, facing away from her. You're fired. Get your things and leave my house. Marina felt her world crumble around her. Fired. After everything she had faced, all the humiliations she had endured, all the progress she had made, she was being thrown out because of a lie, because of documents she didn't even know where they came from. She looked at Gabriel, who remained with his back to her, unyielding. She looked at Mrs. Celeste, who seemed torn between reason and emotion, and she looked at Mrs. Beatrice, who had a glint of satisfaction in her eyes. And in that moment Marina understood. Mrs. Beatrice. The housekeeper was the only person with access to her room, the only one who could have planted those documents. And the reason was obvious. She saw Marina as a threat, as someone who was changing the dynamic of the house, who was getting too close to the family. Marina took a deep breath, trying to control the voice that trembled with anger and despair. "It was you, wasn't it, Mrs. Beatrice?" The housekeeper raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. "I'm sorry?" "You planted these documents in my room. You're trying to get me thrown out." Mrs. Beatrice let out a forced laugh, looking at Mrs. Celeste. "Are you hearing this, ma'am? Now, besides being a liar, she's paranoid." Marina took a step towards her, her fists clenched. "Why do you hate me so much? What did I ever do to you?" Mrs. Beatrice finally let her mask fall. Her eyes narrowed, and her voice came out cold, sharp. "You want to know what you did? You showed up here thinking you could change everything, thinking you could get close to the family, win Mrs. Celeste's trust, influence Mr. Ashworth. But you're just another employee, and employees come and go. I'm the one who stays." The silence in the office was absolute. Gabriel turned slowly in his chair, looking at Mrs. Beatrice with an expression Marina couldn't decipher. "Mrs. Beatrice," said Mrs. Celeste, her voice trembling, "are you admitting you forged these documents?" The housekeeper hesitated, realizing she had said too much, but it was too late to go back. "I did what was necessary to protect this house, this family. People like her don't deserve to be here." Gabriel clenched his fists, his face contorted in fury. "People like her? You think you have the right to judge who deserves to be in my house?" Mrs. Beatrice took a step back, for the first time looking unsure. "Mr. Ashworth, I only wanted— Get out!" The words came out like thunder. Gabriel was trembling with rage, his eyes fixed on the housekeeper. "Get your things and get out of my house, now!" Mrs. Beatrice's eyes widened, shock evident on her face. "Sir, I've worked here for over 20 years. I served your family with loyalty. Loyalty, you call this loyalty? Lying, manipulating, destroying an innocent person's life? This is betrayal, Mrs. Beatrice, and I do not tolerate betrayal." Mrs. Celeste stood up, her voice firm. "Beatrice, Gabriel is right. You have crossed every line. I always trusted you, but what you did is unforgivable. I will arrange for your references and your final payment, but you have 1 hour to leave this house." Mrs. Beatrice stood for a moment, looking between Gabriel and Mrs. Celeste, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Then she turned to Marina, and there was pure hatred in her gaze. "You'll regret this." And she stormed out of the office, slamming the door behind her. Marina felt her legs give way, and she had to lean on a chair. Everything had happened so fast. Mrs. Beatrice had been fired. The truth had come out. But Marina still felt the weight of the accusation, the poison of those words. Mrs. Celeste approached, holding Marina's hands warmly. "My dear, forgive me. I should have trusted you from the beginning. I never should have doubted you." Marina felt the tears finally escape, streaming down her face. "I didn't lie, Mum. My mother really is sick. I just wanted to work, to take care of her. I never wanted to cause any trouble." Mrs. Celeste pulled her into a tight hug, and Marina broke down, sobbing against the shoulder of this woman who was almost a stranger, but who had somehow become an ally. Gabriel watched the scene in silence, and Marina could feel the weight of his gaze. When she finally pulled away from Mrs. Celeste, wiping her tears, she looked at him. "I'm sorry, sir, for everything." Gabriel shook his head, his expression still serious, but there was something different there. Perhaps regret. "No, I'm the one. Who should apologize? I judged you without proof. I let my bitterness speak louder than reason." He paused, taking a deep breath. "Marina, if you still want it, the job is yours. And the performance, too." Marina looked at him, surprised. After everything that had happened, he still wanted her to stay. I don't know if I can." Mrs. Celeste held Marina's hands again. "You can. I know you can. And we will be by your side." Marina looked between the two of them, seeing something she hadn't expected. Acceptance, respect, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something. That could be called trust. All right, I'll stay. The following days were different. The absence of Mrs. Beatrice completely changed the atmosphere of the house. It was as if a weight had been lifted, as if the manor could finally breathe. Mrs. Celeste hired a new housekeeper, a younger, kinder woman who treated Marina as a colleague, not a subordinate. And Gabriel, for the first time in months, began to leave his office. Not just to go to the ballroom to watch Marina dance, but to move around the house, to have coffee on the veranda, to talk with his mother. Small steps, but significant ones. Marina continued to practice every night, and Gabriel continued to help. Gradually, those sessions became more than just practice. They became conversations, moments of exchange, of sharing. One night, after a particularly difficult sequence, Marina sat on the ballroom floor, exhausted. Gabriel approached, watching her attentively. "You're pushing yourself too hard." Marina let out a tired laugh. "It's the only way I know how to do things." Gabriel was silent for a moment, and then he spoke, his voice lower. "I used to be like that too. When I raced, when I competed, I never gave up. I always gave it my all, until one day my body just couldn't take it anymore." Marina looked at him, waiting for him to continue. "I was in a race at Silverstone. It was the final lap, and I was tied with the leader. I pushed too hard, tried to overtake on a curve that was too risky, and I lost control. The car flipped, hit the safety barrier. When I woke up in the hospital, the doctors told me I had injured my spinal cord, that I would never walk again." His voice was heavy with pain, and Marina felt her heart ache. "And the woman I was going to marry, the woman who said she loved me, disappeared. She didn't show up at the hospital, didn't answer my calls. She just vanished from my life. Later I found out she was with another man, someone who could give her what I no longer could." Marina reached out her hand, lightly touching his arm. "I'm so sorry." Gabriel looked at her hand and then at her face. "I spent months blaming myself, thinking I deserved it all, that I was less than a man, less a person, and I started treating everyone around me the same way, as if they were all to blame for my pain." He paused, and Marina saw tears glisten in his eyes. "But you didn't bow down. No matter how much I pushed you, how much I hurt you, you kept going. And that made me realize something, that I was using my pain as an excuse to hurt others, and that it needed to stop." Marina felt her own tears fall, but she didn't wipe them away. "You are not less than anyone, Gabriel. You're just hurt. And wounds can heal." Gabriel took her hand, squeezing it tightly. "Thank you for not giving up on me." They stayed like that for a long moment, in silence, just holding each other's hands. And Marina felt something change inside her. It wasn't love, not yet. But it was something deep, something that went beyond compassion. It was connection. 2 days before the ball, Marina finally had a day off to visit her mother in the hospital. She arrived at the room to find Mrs. Helena Clark sitting up in bed, with a stronger smile on her face. "Marina, how are you, my dear?" Marina hugged her mother, feeling immense relief at seeing her better. "I'm fine, Mom, and you? Did the doctor say anything?" Mrs. Clark held her daughter's face, caressing it fondly. "They said the treatment is working better than they expected, that in a few weeks I might be discharged." Marina felt tears well up again, but this time they were tears of joy. "That's wonderful, Mom. I knew you could do it." They talked for hours, laughing, reminiscing, making plans for the future. And when it was time to leave, Marina felt lighter than she had in months. Returning to the manor, she found Gabriel in the library reading. He looked up as she entered. "How's your mother?" "Better. Much better." Gabriel smiled, a genuine smile. "I'm glad." Marina sat in a nearby armchair watching him. "Gabriel, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why are you helping me? Why, after everything, did you decide to change?" Gabriel closed the book, thinking about the answer. "Because you showed me I was wrong. Not with words, but with actions. You showed me that it's possible to keep going even when all seems lost. And that gave me hope. Something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Marina smiled, feeling her chest warm. You gave me hope too, Gabriel. You gave me a reason to keep going. They looked at each other for a long moment, and there was something unsaid there. Something neither of them was ready to verbalize, but that both of them felt. The day of the ball arrived faster than Marina expected. The manor was unrecognizable. Flowers everywhere, twinkling lights, elegantly decorated tables. A huge team of staff bustled about, preparing everything for the evening. Marina was in her room wearing the dress Mrs. Celeste had had made especially for her. It was simple but elegant, a navy blue dress that fell perfectly on her body, with delicate beaded details. She put her hair up in a low bun, applied a little makeup, and looked at herself in the mirror. She didn't recognize the woman she saw. It was no longer the desperate young woman who had arrived months ago. It was someone stronger, more confident, someone who had fought and survived. A knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. It was Mrs. Celeste, beautiful in a wine-red dress with a pearl necklace. "Marina, you look stunning." Marina smiled, feeling nervous. "Thank you, ma'am. I'm very nervous." Mrs. Celeste took her hands, squeezing them warmly. "You're going to be wonderful." "I know you will." They went downstairs together, and Marina saw that the ballroom was packed. Dozens of elegant guests talking, laughing, drinking champagne, and in the center of it all, in a wheelchair, was Gabriel. He was wearing an impeccable suit, and when he saw Marina descending the staircase, his eyes widened. Marina felt her heart race. Gabriel was looking at her in a way he had never looked before. There was admiration in his gaze, and something more, something that made her stomach flutter. Mrs. Celeste gave an opening speech, thanking everyone for coming, talking about the importance of charity, about new beginnings and hope. And then she announced the special performance. Marina felt her legs tremble as she stepped onto the small stage set up in the center of the room. The lights dimmed, and a single spotlight illuminated her. The music was supposed to start any moment, but nothing happened. Marina looked at the sound technician who was desperately fiddling with the equipment. Something had gone wrong. The system had failed. A murmur went through the crowd. Marina felt panic rise in her throat. This was a disaster. She was going to make a fool of herself, just as Gabriel had predicted. But then she heard a voice inside her. Her father's voice, telling her she was strong. Her mother's voice, telling her she was capable. And Gabriel's voice, telling her she had given him hope. Marina took a deep breath and began. She clapped her hands, creating a rhythm, a strong, steady beat. And she began to dance. At first, the audience was silent, confused. But gradually, some guests began to clap along, following the rhythm Marina created. And the dance came to life. There was no music, no melody. But there was rhythm. There was soul. Marina danced her pain, her struggle, her victory. Every movement was a declaration. Every turn was an affirmation that she existed, that she mattered. And then the sound system finally came back on. The music began to play, and Marina incorporated the rhythm, merging her steps with the melody. The audience was mesmerized. At the peak of the performance, Marina stepped off the stage and walked towards Gabriel. All eyes were on them. She held out her hand, a silent invitation. Gabriel hesitated. Marina could see the fear in his eyes, the insecurity. But she didn't lower her hand. She just waited. And then he accepted. Gabriel took Marina's hand, and she helped him rise from the chair. He was unsteady, leaning on her, but he was standing, and together they danced. It wasn't a technical dance, it wasn't perfect, it was hesitant, vulnerable. But it was real. Gabriel moved with difficulty, Marina guided him with care. And the audience moved, applauded with tears in their eyes. When the music ended, Gabriel returned to his chair exhausted, but with a smile on his face, a smile of victory. Marina bowed, acknowledging the applause, and when she looked at Gabriel, she saw that he was crying. She approached, kneeling beside the chair. "You did it." Gabriel held her face in his hands, and Marina felt her heart soar. No. We did it. And there, in front of everyone, Gabriel kissed her. A soft kiss, filled with gratitude, with hope, with something that was still new, but that was already real. The audience erupted in applause, and Marina felt like she was floating. Because in that moment, she wasn't just the employee who had survived. She was the woman who had helped a man find himself again, and he, in turn, had helped her discover her own strength. The morning after the ball dawned differently. The sunlight streamed through the mansion's windows with an intensity that seemed to announce a new era, a new phase. Marina woke early, as always, but this time it wasn't just habit that pulled her from bed. It was the feeling that everything had changed the night before. The kiss. She touched her lips, still feeling the warmth. Of that moment, Gabriel had kissed her in front of everyone. He had exposed himself, had been vulnerable, and that meant something. Something Marina was still trying to fully comprehend. She went down to the kitchen and found Mrs. Celeste already making coffee, a radiant smile on her face. "Good morning, my dear. Did you sleep well?" Marina smiled, feeling shy. "Yes, ma'am. And you?" Mrs. Celeste approached, taking Marina's hands warmly. "I haven't slept this well in years. Last night was magical, Marina. You not only gave a beautiful performance, you brought my son back to life." Marina felt her eyes well up. I just did what I thought was right." Mrs. Celeste shook her head, moved. "You did much more than that. You showed Gabriel that he still has worth, that he can still be happy, and that is priceless." They had coffee together, talking about the previous night, about the guests who had been moved, about the generous donations that had been made to the charity. It was as if the house had finally started to breathe again, to live. But Marina was nervous. She needed to talk to Gabriel. She needed to understand what that kiss meant to him. Was it just a moment of emotion, or was it something more? She found Gabriel in the library, leafing through a book. When he saw her enter, a smile formed on his face. A different smile, lighter, more genuine. "Good morning." "Good morning, Gabriel." She used his name for the first time without Mr., and Gabriel noticed. His eyes shone. "Sit with me." Marina nodded, sitting in the armchair next to his wheelchair. They were silent for a moment, just looking at each other. "About last night," Gabriel began, his voice hesitant. "I wanted to explain." Marina felt her heart race. "You don't have to explain." Gabriel shook his head. "I do, because what I felt last night, what I feel now, is something I didn't expect. After the accident, after everything that happened, I thought I would never be able to feel something like this again. But you changed everything." He took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "You showed me that I can still live, that I can still feel, and I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you." Marina felt tears stream down her face, but they were tears of happiness. "You won't lose me, Gabriel. I'm here, and I'm going to stay here." Gabriel pulled her closer, and Marina knelt beside the chair, resting her head on his shoulder. They stayed like that for a long time, just holding each other, feeling each other's presence. But Marina knew this was just the beginning. There was still so much to be done, so many battles ahead. Gabriel still had a long road to recovery, and she still had her mother to care for. But for the first time in a long time, she felt she wasn't alone. In the following days, Gabriel did something that surprised everyone. He announced he was going to start intensive physical therapy. Not just the basic exercises the doctors had recommended, but a full program focused on regaining as much mobility as possible. Marina accompanied him to every session. They were grueling, painful sessions. Gabriel would cry out in frustration, sweat, weep. But he never gave up. And Marina was always there, holding his hand, encouraging him, pushing him when he wanted to stop. "You can do it. Just a little more." Gabriel would look at her, and in those eyes, she saw determination. The same determination he had when he was a driver, when he competed, when he fought for victories. That strength hadn't disappeared. It had just been dormant, 3 months after the ball, Marina received a phone call that would change everything. It was the director of a dance school in London, one of the most renowned in the city. He had been at the ball, had seen Marina's performance, and was offering her a full scholarship. "Marina," he said over the phone, "you have something rare. It's not just technique, it's soul. And I would like the opportunity to work with you to help you develop that talent." Marina was speechless. This was everything she had ever dreamed of, but never believed possible. A chance to study dance professionally, to turn that passion into a career. But there was a problem. The school was full-time. She would have to leave her job at the manor. When she told Gabriel, he didn't hesitate. "You have to accept." "But what about my job here? And your mother? I need the money to—" Gabriel interrupted her, holding her hands. "Marina, I will make sure your mother has all the treatment she needs. I will pay for all the medical expenses, all the medicine, and I will provide you with a stipend so you can dedicate yourself completely to your studies." Marina shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I can't accept that. It's too much." "It's not too much, it's the least I can do. You gave me my life back, Marina. Let me do this for you." Marina looked at him, seeing the sincerity in those dark eyes. And she realized this wasn't charity. It was love. A love that had been born amidst pain and struggle, but that now blossomed with full force. "All right, I accept." Gabriel smiled, pulling her into a tight hug. In the following months, Marina dedicated herself completely to dance. She studied techniques, learned different styles, participated in performances, and with every step she became more confident, more sure of herself. Gabriel, for his part, continued with his physical therapy. The progress was slow but steady. He could already stand with support for longer periods, could take a few steps with crutches, and each achievement was celebrated as a victory. Mrs. Celeste watched it all with tears of joy. Her son had come back. Not the son from before the accident, but someone better. Someone who had learned from pain, who had grown through adversity. And Marina, the young woman who had arrived at the manor desperate and scared, had become part of the family. Not as an employee, but as someone essential, someone loved. A year after the ball, Marina had her first professional performance. It was an important night, a charity gala at the Royal Opera House, completely sold out. Marina had been chosen as one of the soloists, and the pressure was immense. Backstage, she was nervous, pacing back and forth, trying to calm her thoughts. That's when Gabriel appeared. He was standing, leaning on 2 canes, but standing. Marina ran to him, hugging him tightly. "You came!" Gabriel smiled, kissing the top of her head. "Of course I came. Did you think I would miss the most important day of your life?" Marina pulled back, looking at him with admiration. "You're standing." Gabriel took a step, then another, moving slowly but with determination. "I still need the canes, but I'm making progress, and today I wanted to stand for you." Marina felt tears fall, but quickly wiped them away. She couldn't cry now. She had a performance to give. "Thank you for everything." Gabriel kissed her softly, a kiss full of love and support. "Go break a leg out there." The performance was an absolute success. Marina danced as she had never danced before. Every movement was a celebration, every turn a declaration of victory. And when it was over, the audience rose in a standing ovation that lasted for minutes. Marina looked to the front row, where Gabriel was. Tears were streaming down his face, but he was smiling. And then, with effort, with pain, but with courage, he stood up, not just leaning on the canes, but using all the strength he had regained in months of therapy. The audience noticed, and the applause intensified. Gabriel was standing, applauding, his face transformed by emotion. Marina came down from the stage, running to him, and they embraced there in front of everyone. An embrace of new beginnings, of healing, of love. 2 years later, Ashworth Manor had been completely transformed. Gabriel and Mrs. Celeste had decided to convert it into an arts institute, a place where young people from all backgrounds could study dance, music, theatre, painting. A place of opportunities, of dreams. Marina was one of the main teachers, teaching dance to dozens of students. She saw in each of them a version of herself, that scared young woman who had arrived at the manor, not knowing what the future held. Gabriel was always present, managing the institute, participating in classes, encouraging the students. He still used the canes for long distances, but could walk without support for short distances. And more importantly, he had started smiling again. Not just polite smiles, but genuine, life-filled smiles. Mrs. Helena Clark had been discharged from the hospital over a year ago and now lived in a comfortable apartment that Gabriel had arranged. She visited her daughter regularly at the institute, helping with activities, talking with the students. The illness was in remission, and the doctors were optimistic about the future. One afternoon, Marina was in the Manners ballroom, which now served as the institute's main dance studio. She was teaching a class of teenagers when Gabriel entered, walking without his canes for the first time. Marina stopped the class, looking at him with wide eyes. "Gabriel?" He smiled, taking a few more steps, slow but steady. Surprised? Marina ran to him, and Gabriel caught her in his arms, spinning her around. The students applauded, moved, and Marina laughed, hugging him tightly. "You did it!" Gabriel set her down, holding her face in his hands. "We did it." He took a small box from his pocket, and Marina felt her heart stop. Gabriel knelt with difficulty but with determination and opened the box. Inside was a simple but beautiful ring. "Marina Clark, you changed my life in every possible way. You showed me that it's worth fighting, that it's worth living, and I want to spend the rest of my life by your side. Will you marry me?" Marina was crying, but they were tears of pure happiness. "Yes, yes, I will." Gabriel placed the ring on her finger and then stood up, kissing her passionately. The students erupted in applause and cheers of joy, and Marina felt that this was the perfect moment, because she had arrived at that house lost, scared, desperate. And now, here she was, loved, fulfilled, complete. The wedding took place 6 months later, in a simple but emotional ceremony in the Manners garden. Mrs. Celeste cried throughout the ceremony, happy to see her son rebuilt, happy to gain a daughter-in-law she loved like her own. Mrs. Helena Clark was radiant, proud of her daughter, grateful for everything life had brought after so much suffering. And Gabriel and Marina exchanged vows under the open sky, promising love, respect, companionship, promising to continue fighting together, growing together, living together. When the officiant asked if Gabriel took Marina as his wife, he didn't hesitate. "I do. Today and always." And when it was Marina's turn, she looked into his eyes, seeing the entire path they had walked together, all the difficulties they had overcome. "I do. With all my heart." The kiss that sealed the marriage was long, passionate, and the audience of friends and family applauded with tears in their eyes. 5 years later, the Ashworth Arts Institute was a national benchmark. Hundreds of young people had passed through its doors, many of them achieving successful professional careers in the arts. And Marina was a central figure, not just as a teacher, but as the Institute's artistic director. Gabriel had become an active advocate for the rights of people with disabilities, using his own story as inspiration. He gave lectures, participated in events, and helped others going through what he had gone through. And together, Marina and Gabriel had built a family, not just in the biological sense, though they were expecting their first child, but in the broader sense. The Institute was a large family, full of stories of overcoming adversity, of dreams fulfilled, of transformed lives. One evening, Marina was in the ballroom watching a student performance. Gabriel came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, resting his hands on her growing belly. "What are you thinking about?" Marina smiled, covering his hands with hers. "I was thinking about how everything has changed, how we've changed." Gabriel kissed her neck softly. "You changed my life, Marina. You gave me a reason to live." Marina turned in his arms, facing him. "And you gave me the courage to dream. You gave me the opportunity to be who I always wanted to be." They kissed, there in the middle of the empty ballroom, as the music from the performance echoed in the distance. And Marina realized that this was the perfect ending. Not because everything had been easy, not because there were no more challenges, but because they had learned that together they could face anything. A few weeks later, Marina was organizing papers in the Institute's office when she found an old photo. It was the photo she had carried in her bag when she first arrived at the manor. The photo of her as a child, with her parents, in front of the property's gate. She looked at the image, feeling a wave of emotion. Her father would have been so proud. He would have loved to see what the manor had become, would have loved to meet Gabriel, would have loved to know that his daughter was happy. Marina put the photo in a special drawer, along with other precious memories, because the past was important, but the future was what mattered now, and the future was full of possibilities. That night, after everyone had gone home, Marina and Gabriel walked through the manor's garden. The rose bushes were in bloom, the air was fragrant, and the stars shone in the sky. "Do you regret anything?" asked Gabriel, holding her hand. Marina thought for a moment. No. Every difficulty, every pain, every tear, it was all worth it, because it brought me here, to you. Gabriel stopped, turning to face her. "I love you, Marina, more than I thought it was possible to love someone." Marina smiled, touching his face tenderly. "I love you too, Gabriel. I always will." They went back inside the manor, hand in hand, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new stories, but that together they were ready for anything, because in the house where pain and arrogance once reigned, love now resided. A love that had been born amidst suffering, but had transformed into hope. A love that proved that no one is too broken to be healed, that sometimes all a life needs is someone who refuses to give up on it. And Marina and Gabriel had proven that, not just to each other, but to all those who walked through the doors of the Ashworth Arts Institute. Because there, in that place that had been a mausoleum, now lived the proof that it is always possible to start over. It is always possible to find light, even in the deepest darkness. And that was the greatest lesson of all. 10 years later, Marina was backstage at the Royal Opera House, preparing for a special performance. She was 35 now, but she still danced with the same passion as ever. Beside her was an 8-year-old girl with dark hair and bright eyes, dressed in a dance costume. "Mommy, I'm nervous." Marina knelt, fixing her daughter's hair tenderly. "It's normal to be nervous, my love. But you're going to be amazing, I know it." The little girl smiled, confident. "Just like you were when you first danced." Marina laughed, remembering that distant day when it all began. "Exactly like I did." Gabriel entered the wings, now 45, his hair starting to grey at the temples. He walked with a slight limp, but without canes. He picked up his daughter, kissing the top of her head. "My favorite ballerina. Ready to shine?" The girl nodded excitedly. "Ready, Daddy." Gabriel set her down, and the little girl ran to join the other children in the cast. Marina and Gabriel were alone for a moment, watching the hustle and bustle. "Do you remember when all this started?" Marina asked, resting her head on his shoulder. Gabriel put his arm around her, holding her close. "How could I forget? It was the day my life truly began." They stood there embraced as the music began to play, and when the curtain rose, revealing the illuminated stage, Marina and Gabriel smiled. Because that wasn't just their daughter's performance, it was the continuation of a story of love, of overcoming, of hope. A story that proved it's worth fighting, that it's worth believing, that it's worth never giving up, because in the end, love always wins. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Marina and Gabriel has deeply touched your heart. If you were moved by this journey of overcoming adversity, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what marked you most in this story. Every day we bring intense stories like this one, which reveal the deepest side of the human soul and show that it is always possible to start over, always possible to find love and hope, even in the most difficult moments. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode with a new story that will stir your emotions.